Hello and welcome to Other Voices, brought to you by Peninsula Peace and Justice Center. I'm your host, Paul George. On this month's edition of Other Voices, we're going to return to the question of immigration reform. We're returning to this issue because Washington says they're returning to this issue. Just this morning, President Obama told a meeting of business leaders, quote, "There's no reason why we can't get this done before the end of the year," end quote. We'll find out if he's being overly optimistic, a little too much hope, or maybe we can really get something meaningful done before the end of the year. There's also a lot going on in this issue right here in our own county, Santa Clara County, and we're going to talk about those issues as well because they affect us even closer to home. And we have a wonderful panel here tonight to take us through all the variations of this rather complex issue. Starting at the far end of the table, I'm pleased to introduce and welcome to the program Teresa Castellanos. Teresa is the coordinator of the Immigrant Relations and Integration Services, a service of Santa Clara County. Teresa, welcome to Other Voices.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next around the table is Minh-Chau Nguyen, staff attorney for Asian Law Alliance. Minh-Chau, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, but last but not least, not unfamiliar face and voice to this program, Samina Sundas, founding executive director of American Muslim Voice. Samina, welcome back to Other Voices.
Thank you so very much.
Speaking of voices, I'm going to reverse order and ask you to explain just quickly in a minute or two what each of your organizations does, especially in relation to this issue. And they all, I know you do a lot of different things, but American Muslim Voice, you're concerned with immigration reform issues.
American Muslim Voice was founded in 2003 to bridge the gap between all communities, religious and cultural gap. And yes, part of the reason we are not funded by the foundations is because we do a lot, and they tell us that if you focus on a narrow issue, you will have a better luck. But I have not found
heard the same thing.
I have not found all that I do in that which one is not a human issue.
Right.
I'm dealing with human issues. So as long as there are human issues, and if my Latino brothers and sisters, or Korean or Chinese or Japanese or Pakistanis and Indians are affected by anything that we are creating, I am going to be part of that.
Yeah,
so we are part of the coalition.
Yeah, how can you unlink all these
Exactly.
issues?
So,
and you're an immigrant yourself, right?
I'm an immigrant myself, yes, and proud to be all things that I am. A Pakistani by birth, a Muslim by choice and religion, and American by choice, and I'm proud of all these things. So for me, if there is anything that's concerning any of these things and all the human beings, I'm there.
All right, thank you. Minh-Chau, Asian Law Alliance, what do you do?
So Asian Law Alliance is a nonprofit based in Santa Clara County. We do a lot of work in housing, domestic violence, public benefits, and I primarily focus on immigration. And so that's why we're concerned, because a lot of the issues, especially with immigration reform, will affect our clients.
Yeah. Are you an attorney yourself?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So do you help people with their immigration process?
Yeah, a lot of our work is focused on citizenship, and we also do a lot of DACA work, which helps the dreamers eventually get
a lot of what work?
DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Okay, don't throw out acronyms to me without explaining, or for the audience.
Yeah,
okay.
so that helps what the so-called dreamers, which are the students who came here through no fault of their own before they were 16, and they've known no other country rather than the United States. And
yeah,
so
we're gonna get into
the
Dream Act a lot more.
Yeah.
Do you work with people who are being threatened with deportation?
Unfortunately, we don't. So we usually refer those people out. So because we don't actually have the capacity to go to court for them. But
who does most of that kind of work? Is it pro bono?
Yeah, a lot of it is pro bono. The Executive Office of Immigration Review has a list of providers that actually do a lot of them.
But all of it is not pro bono. Actually, there is a lot of the time very expensive, and a lot of the time attorneys take advantage of these dreamers or people, like during the INS special registration when people had to find attorneys. There were so many attorneys that were really crooks.
Yeah.
So there are all kind of people up there.
But we have a good
Our
upstanding attorney.
organization is legitimate.
Yeah. Oh no, they're wonderful.
Teresa, your organization, Immigrant Relations and Integration Services, is a county agency, is that
It's
correct?
a county program.
Yeah.
And we're the only one that exists in the nation at the county level.
Is that right?
No other county has a program that exists like this. The state of New York has a program, the city of New York, the state of Illinois, and the state of Washington. But we're the only county that invests in immigrant integration nationwide. So we're a nationwide model.
Oh, that's great. The name kind of implies what you do, but tell us a little bit more about, the actual sorts of things you might do.
The key thing that we do is that we fund agencies to provide immigration legal services and to provide citizenship services. And so as part of that, we convene the agencies to do a citizenship day in 14 languages. We are the only county that's able to convene in 14 languages. Most counties can do 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
but we get up to 14. We also do a lot of policy. We do research. We do community forums on different issues happening in the immigrant community. And we do a lot of community education. What are the issues? What's happening? What's changing? What are the trends? And so we're connected to the diversity of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's terrific. And 14 languages.
14 languages.
amazing.
And that's just barely the beginning. That's the tip of the iceberg. There's over 197 languages spoken in Santa Clara County, over 200 spoken in the state of California.
I'm writing that number down. That it's just stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in Santa Clara County, over 50% of the population speaks another language other than English at home.
Yeah.
So we have the wealth and diversity of the world in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's one of the things I really like about living here, but some numbers like that really put some reality on just how diverse it is here.
Yeah.
How do you find people? How do you do the outreach so that they know these services are available?
Well, what's unique about our work is that normally when government does a project in an immigrant community, they keep kind of starting from scratch over and over again. And because we exist and we've existed for 17 years, that's 17 years of building a relationship. So for example, in the Pakistani community, we won't only have one leader that we work with, we'll have a group of leaders that we work with.
Yeah.
And we're always building those relationships. And so that feeling of trust exists between the immigrant community and Santa Clara County, which normally doesn't exist in other places. And so it's just that idea of a continuous relationship versus starting, stopping, starting, stopping, starting, stopping.
Yeah.
And you get to see how communities change because they're not always the same. What a community looks like when it first immigrates is very different than what it looks like 10 years later, is very
Yeah.
different than what it looks like 20 years
and
later.
as the younger generations come
Of
along.
course. And
certainly.
kind of the myth around immigration is that it's like a Peter Pan myth. They never grow up. Not true.
Yeah.
Communities learn English, communities establish themselves, communities buy homes, communities become Americans.
Yeah. And the countries they're coming from are undergoing changes
Yes.
all the time. And that drives different immigration waves, I'm sure, too.
So America really doesn't lose anything. As Americans, we gain things. When communities come, they are not a burden. They contribute so much. There are so many myths that people say that, especially the undocumented are burden. They are not. They actually contribute a lot. Sadly, they cannot use those benefits that they should be theirs.
Before we get into what's happening in Washington and then coming back to the county, it's, I remember in school when I was growing up, the point that you're saying, the melting pot of America was one of the points of pride that we were taught about, and that it was one of the strengths of our country. And then you get to the debate in Washington and you hear all this vitriol and just hate speech directed toward immigrants. And not even just immigrants, but non-whites, basically, let's face it. What happens between grade school and when people get out into the world? I mean, this is probably a question that you can't answer, but it just makes me... That's what we're dealing with right now.
I think it's key. We're fighting over what is an American. And so is an American the values that we've had for the last 500 years, which is hardworking, family-focused, innovative, leader, willing to contribute, or is it race and language?
And religion.
and religion.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're fighting over right now. Because I think there is, when you look at the population, it's the same population that has decided, oh, I can try something new somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so that means they're willing to try things, that means they're innovative, that means they're strong, that means they're smart. Otherwise, they would have stayed home. But we're not recognizing that it's the same population.
Yeah. What about the economy? Does, you hear, the immigrants are taking our jobs. Does that rise and fall with?
I mean, who wants to be an agricultural worker? Who wants to work really hard in
Right.
the fields? Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren did a segment with Colbert on the Colbert Report a couple
really?
years ago, and he tried to be a migrant farm worker, and he lasted less than an hour, I think it
Yeah.
was. So they had this massive call, please Americans take our jobs, and I think 2 people came out of the country.
Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah, you see in states where they've passed really harsh anti-immigration laws in the South, and like in Arizona, that when the farm workers, for example, the agriculture workers start disappearing, there's no one to take those jobs, and the farmers end up in big trouble because they can't
have
bring
no
in
one
the-
to pick their crops.
Yeah.
And industry purposely targets a certain population for the type of work that they're doing. And so it's the push and pull effect. We also have passed many laws that we've taken to other countries about in our relationships, and we've also forced that migration. I mean, we had migration from the Vietnamese, we had migration from the Central Americans based on our policies that we had.
Right.
So it's the people who are impacted by the global phenomena and also by our policies that we decide. When we decide to pass NAFTA and we displace all the farmers because we are sending our corn,
Right.
well, those people go to the city and there's no jobs in the city, so then where do they come next?
Right.
So I mean, in my work, I'm like, okay, wherever we pass the next NAFTA, or the next free trade agreement, that's where our next immigrant population is going to come because we know we're displacing people and we know we're forcing them to come.
And that's apparently going to be in Asia with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which we'll be doing a program on soon on Other Voices. So
I
let's-
also want to just
Yeah.
interject here and say that, when immigrants come, especially from Pakistan and India, South Asians in Silicon Valley, they are the leaders in innovation. They are the leaders in just, creating new companies and all that. America has not really invested in them. We are benefiting from their knowledge, from their talents. They studied in their countries back home and brought all that, we are getting the cream of the crop for pennies.
Yeah, and
So-
if you think about it, the founder of Yahoo
Yeah.
came from Taiwan at the age of 10 on a family visa. The founders of Google, eBay, Intel
all
are
these.
all immigrants as well, and they've created thousands of jobs.
And what was
It's
the
an
number?
interesting list, isn't it?
Right.
Well, and Silicon Valley would not be Silicon Valley without the immigrant population.
Exactly.
The knowledge and wealth of the world is here, and we are the economic nation of the country because of the world knowledge and diversity that we have here. And different from other communities, because we're comparable to New York, San Francisco, LA, Chicago. In those communities, the immigrant populations are segregated on top of being segregated by class. In here, all the poor people live in the same place, all the middle class people live in the same place, and all the rich people live in the same place. So you're able to organize and convene people in a way that you don't have to deal with the barriers of ethnicity and language. And that's really fascinating here because you can go to any part of town in Silicon Valley and you can have a choice of 6 different restaurants to eat from because we're all next to each other.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point.
Another myth I want to break is that, a lot of the time I keep hearing that even very well-meaning people saying that immigrants have these very low-level jobs. That is such a myth. Immigrants are in every area you could imagine. They're not just your nannies and gardeners and restaurant workers. They're everywhere. They're your teachers, they're your nurses, they're your doctors, they're your engineers. So I want the immigrants to feel proud of, doesn't matter what they're doing, but don't label them please as they are just the bare minimum here. They're not.
Yeah.
So
Through
I
all
just
strata of society.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about what's happening or not happening or might happen or could happen. As I read the quote from this morning, President Obama is determined to get it done shortly after the infamous government shutdown. Even a number of Republicans in Washington started saying we can get immigration reform done. I think they need to burnish their reputation a little bit after the government shutdown. So who wants to handicap this for us? Are we going to see any kind of meaningful immigration reform by the end of the year, as the president says he's hopeful can happen?
So I think we're cautiously optimistic, because there would be no way that we would do this kind of work if we weren't optimistic that something could happen.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
So as you may or may not know, at the end of June, the Senate passed a bill actually to overhaul the whole immigration system. It provides a pathway to citizenship for actually undocumented immigrants. It also strengthens the border. It provides for mandatory E-Verify, which is an electronic verification system for employers that they have to utilize. It changes the family immigration system, which Samina will talk about a little bit later. It changes the employment-based system. It integrates agricultural workers into society. It allows the dreamers that we spoke about before a meaningful pathway to citizenship as well. So there are a lot of different changes in this bill, and it's already passed the Senate.
What was the vote in the Senate?
It was actually 68 to 32.
So that's a pretty
Yeah.
substantial majority.
Yeah.
Now, let me just ask each of you this, that
Okay.
No bill that ever comes out of the Congress is perfect or a work of art, and everybody's got a gripe about it, but how would you rate this bill? Is it, is it something that you can really enthusiastically support, or is it the best you can get, or are you going to be fighting to make it better, for example?
I think it's the best that we can get with Congress as how it is right now. You have to work with people who hate immigrants and want to deport everybody.
Right.
And then you have to work with people who only want citizenship for everybody. So it's kind of a balancing act, and
Sure.
nothing is going to be perfect. There's going to be stuff that we don't agree with that is going to make it very difficult for people, but something is better than nothing at this point.
Right.
If you go all or nothing, sometimes you get nothing.
I would also add that this is the furthest we've gotten in 27 years.
That's a good point.
The last time we did this was in 1987, and there hasn't even been a little teeny tiny crack in the window.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think this is an opportunity, number one. Number two, communities will always organize for more. They're not going to stay satisfied with this. They're
Right.
going to keep asking for more, because that's what we do as human beings. We always want to improve the quality of life that we have. And so I think getting something passed, and of course the communities are still fighting for more. They haven't just rolled up their sleeves and say, give me whatever you want. They're still organizing, they're still making demands, they're still writing letters. I think the community will always fight to improve their quality of life. That's why they're here.
Sure. And the day, assuming something passes, the day after it passes, you're back at work.
Back
to
at
get-
work.
to- to
We
get
have
the-
a year
to get
before
the
regulations
improvements.
are passed. So in regards to what the House is doing, on October 2nd, 2013, the Democrats actually introduced a bill that's really similar to the Senate bill
Senate
as
bill.
well. And so there are 189 co-sponsors on it. 3 of them are Republican. So we actually have 3 Republican co-sponsors.
Uh-huh.
They're frankly in the districts with the most Latino with the
Yeah.
highest Latino populations.
Okay.
So.
And is
And
that
Boehner has
substantially
said-
different than the Senate bill, or pretty much?
Not a lot. Some of the changes are regarding the border security. So the border security amendments in the Senate bill are really restrictive, and they actually call for a lot more funding. So the funding number is like $46 billion to securitize the border. So they want 20,000 more Border Patrol officers along the border, which means 1 agent for every 1,000 feet. They want 700 miles of fencing. That includes double fencing. So that's 350 more miles than we currently have. And they want to raise the budget. They want to increase the technology, regardless of actual need. So surveillance, unmanned aircraft.
Drones, yeah.
Yeah, thermal imaging. They want to do all that. And so actually the House bill takes away some of those, and they actually say, let's do a study, let's assess it based on need, and we'll kind of go from there.
Well, we're talking about border security. One of the phrases that you keep hearing, and I'll be honest, I don't know where it has ended up in the legislation, is secure the borders first, and then everything else will kick in. And there's this debate about, well, how do you determine if the border has been made secure? And it sounds like a way that they can put all this military hardware basically on the border and not do anything else for years. Is that still part of the mix here, or?
So what's in the Senate bill is 100% surveillance of the border and 90% effectiveness at not letting people in. So Colbert did a kind of, I know I'm quoting him a lot, but he did a study, he just joked that it was like, bring 9 friends and you get in free. So it's kind of hard to, how do you judge 90% effectiveness?
Yeah.
No, but
is there a standard in the bill that immigration has to drop by 90% before anything else kicks in?
No, there's nothing, not like that.
So I don't understand why we keep spending money where we know it is going to be wasted. Because as long as rules like NAFTA and all the other things are there, when human beings cannot support their families, they cannot provide food for them, they are going to find ways to get into America, especially if we have border there. And the only thing all this surveillance is going to do, more people are going to die trying to come to America. I don't understand that. We expect the different result by doing the same thing over and over and over. You know, and it's
well,
not.
I don't want to be too facetious, Amina, but look at the stock prices of the weapons manufacturers, and
That's
you'll
true.
understand
Well,
why.
I think we need to look at whose interests are being defended.
Exactly.
And
That's my
money
point.
has the right to travel wherever it wants, and people have all these barriers
That's right.
to make their lives better, and so that has to be part of the conversation too.
Absolutely. It may almost come across as a cliche anymore, but the reality of the military-industrial complex in this country drives a lot of this insane spending. I don't think anybody actually cares whether spending $46 billion actually secures the border or not. They're appropriating that money for campaign donors who manufacture drones and heat imagery devices and stuff like that. That's always part of what churns through Washington.
Well, and we also have to say we have a choice.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
as citizens, as taxpayers, as people who live here, we can say, no, we'd rather spend it on education.
Right.
Or we'd rather spend it on health. Or we'd rather spend it on the aging population. A lot of times I think we get to the point where we think that things just happen. No, things don't just happen. We let them happen.
Totally.
And so we also have to stand up to say, no, this does not work for these reasons. And I think going back to the issue of immigration reform, it is so broken that U.S. citizen children are being forced to choose, do I grow up with my parents, or do I have to leave my country of origin?
Right.
Because as a U.S. citizen child, I no longer have this right to have both things with me. And so it is that broken. And so we need to look at the issue of we are creating a generation of youth that will be second-class citizens because they will either have lost their parents and have had to raise themselves, or they will have to leave to another country that they don't even know, that they don't even understand, that the education is not comparable, and that it's a different language.
Yeah.
And that's what we're forcing to happen to U.S. citizen children.
Yeah.
We had that case in Palo
Yeah,
Alto.
the Peace and
Ramirez.
Justice Center got involved in one
Yeah.
of these cases. It was heartbreaking.
It was
the kids
Ramirez.
had grown up here, were in school, were doing well in school, and the parents were getting deported, and the kids were being sent to a country they knew nothing about. Had never been there, knew nothing about
And
it.
when we went with them to ICE office,
Yeah.
they said, well, they're citizens, they could stay here. And we looked at them, they are ages.
Not really a choice.
Ages, I think at the time the youngest was 5 years old
Yeah.
and the oldest was 14. How are they going to manage, you
Right.
know? So they deported. The kids were crying. It was heartbreaking
yeah,
when
it
we
was.
had to say goodbye to them,
Yeah.
you know? And yeah.
So, okay, let's get back to the elements of the bill. It's fine to wander because that's the way conversations are. So, $46 billion for securing the border. Anything else along those lines? I mean, it's just shocking, obviously, with the.
So I can talk a little bit about how undocumented people become citizens. Maybe that would be something.
The path to citizenship.
Yeah, the path to citizenship. So it's a 13-year path to citizenship, actually. So in order to become what's called an RPI, a registered provisional immigrant, you need to have come to the United States before December 31st, 2011. You need to have paid your taxes, not committed significant crimes like felonies or aggravated felonies, or not 3 or more DUIs. Not committed, just other crimes that make you normally ineligible otherwise. And you also have to pay what's a $1,000 fine. So that fine can be split up, into like $500 segments. You can pay like a portion now and then a portion when you renew, because the status only lasts for 6 years. So upon that 6th year, when you renew the RPI status, what you have to do is you actually have to prove that you were continuously employed during that period with not a gap of more than 60 days, or you have
in
to
this economy.
Yeah.
Yes.
In this economy. Or you have to prove that you made like an average of 100% of the federal poverty level. So for a family of one, I think 100% of the federal poverty level is $11,000, roughly $500. You can also be a full-time student, so there are exemptions.
Yeah.
If you're a student, if you are on maternity leave or medical leave, or if you have physical or mental disabilities, and there's waivers for children under 21 as well. So after that, after you renew and you already paid your $1,000, in order to get your green card, you've had your green card, your RPI status for 10 years. And so you pay, in order to get your green card, that's another $1,000 fine. So you have to pay another $1,000. And then you also have to prove that, you've actually at 125% of the federal poverty level at that point. Continuous employment. All the same
60,
stuff.
no 60-day
60
gap.
days.
Yes.
Yeah.
it's the
So
same
I mean,
stuff.
that means people are going to fall out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a
it's-
long
Sounds
time.
like
extremely
a lot of
That's a
people are
long
gonna
time
fall
to be
out.
able to
There
get
is.
to the end.
Yeah, there is an extreme hardship waiver, and they'll document whether you're related to a U.S. citizen child or other things. So there are discretionary waivers as well, and then after 3 years with your green card, you can become a citizen after that. But this isn't the fines
With
are
another $1,000.
the fines are in addition.
That's another
The
fee.
fines are in addition to the application fees.
Yeah.
Oh,
These
okay.
fees are different. These are just
These
fines.
are fines on top of everything. Make sure you have to pay your taxes and
The fine for the crime of coming here without
Yeah.
proper
yes,
documentation.
correct.
And how much are the fees?
So in order to become a citizen, it's $680, but there
Per
is a fee
person.
waiver for citizenship.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it'll actually be they'll be allowed to use it. I don't know if Congress will allow it
Yeah.
if they're adjusting becoming a citizen based on being undocumented. And then to get your green card to adjust status is actually, I think it's $1,040. So that's, and
These are-
refugees are the only category that are exempt from that fee. So.
Yeah, and if you're a refugee from the
Yes.
appropriate country. we
You
don't
would
know how
already have
they-
status,
Yeah,
so.
how that works.
Yeah.
Well,
It's going to be extremely expensive.
yeah, expensive and really hard to meet the criteria. It
Well, and
sounds
on
like.
top of that, there'll be an English requirement no matter what.
Yeah.
And there'll be a civics and history requirement no matter what.
Yeah.
So that's also a given. And I think one of the big shifts that Samina can also comment on is we're going from family-based immigration to merit-based immigration.
Right.
And so that means right now the focus of immigration is that if you have family in the United States, you can immigrate family members. Merit-based would say we take into account your education, we take into account your relationships, we take into account your contributions. We have to take in a bunch of criteria into account before we decide whether you can come or not.
So for families, let's say, I'm a US citizen, and if I wanted to petition for my siblings, my parents you could still do under new law, but for siblings and for your children who are married or they are over 31, I no longer will be able to petition them. So imagine when you come to a new country, you want to have some people in your lives that you can always count on. Because each individual needs people around them to support and to just be their base. And if you separate that, you are breaking normal ties to the families and all that. And I don't think it's humane for us to do that, just break all these family ties. And
Yeah.
it seems like that point system, just like you're earning stickers. You are just putting something on the refrigerator, say, okay, I was good today, so I will get a star today. So basically, again, we will only allow you if we need you. Basically, that's what we are telling them.
Yeah.
And I think added to that is this idea that workers don't need their families. People are going to immigrate and integrate successfully when they have family support.
Right.
If we think we can just take workers without everything that comes with them, we're creating a false dichotomy that doesn't exist.
Yeah. I don't know, but I would guess that most people who come here looking for work are looking at it as a temporary situation. They can send some money back home until they save up enough to bring the family here.
Families can actually come under the bill as well, along with the immigrant.
So how does the immigrant community, what do they think of this extremely long, arduous, very difficult to meet path to citizenship?
I mean, we knew it was going to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's just, it remains to be seen exactly how difficult. Because
Yeah.
this is a proposal. We don't really know exactly what the final bill will look like, if there is a final bill at all.
Right. This is what passed the Senate, though?
This is what
roughly?
passed the Senate.
Yeah.
A similar thing was introduced in the House as well,
Yeah.
but by Democrats. So Boehner has said publicly that he wouldn't allow the Senate bill for a vote, and it's pretty similar. So Republicans are actually working on what's called a KIDS Act, it's for dreamers, but it's hit a little snag, because once the dreamers become citizens, they're not sure if they want to allow citizens to petition for their parents or their family members as well. Because the whole premise of being a dreamer is you came in through no fault of your own.
Right.
So if you're, that's how you got a lot of them on board. So now if they're rewarding their parents after they become citizens, then there's a little bit of discussion in the House whether that's feasible or whether it will pass.
So there is also division among immigrants, like some of them who came with the documents, legal ways, and there is such backlog of immigration. If they are waiting many, many years, and because that's particularly in my community, people were saying, why are you working for these people who are undocumented and you're supporting them? They didn't come legally, and they are going to get citizenships before we do. So all these things create divisions within the communities and all that.
Yeah, the bill tries to address that concern by eliminating the backlog within 7 years, and it also doesn't allow anybody to get their green cards, RPIs to get their green cards, until they have to go back to the end of the line and make sure that the people who before have gotten their green cards first. So.
And when you look at family-based immigration, you're talking about waiting 15 to 25 years.
25 years, yeah.
So it's not like 5 years, 10 years. It's 15 to 25 years before you can immigrate parents or siblings. And it depends what country you're coming from.
I remember I petitioned for my mom when she was here. So once you send in the application, you cannot go back. That was the rule at that time. I don't know what is it now. But my dad got ill, so my mom had to go back. So they did not allow the special,
So that was the end of that.
That was the end of that. And sadly, my mom passed away in 2005. And last year, I received a letter from ICE saying that your number has come again. So if you want to just, that has been, 20 years now?
Yeah.
So it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Vietnamese people are waiting 12 years for their siblings to come. In the Filipino community, it's like 20 years. It's really long. So.
Yeah. There's a different period for each country?
Yes.
Based on what?
On the numbers of people that are here and petitioning to immigrate.
I see.
So for China, India, Mexico, the Philippines, there's what's called a visa cap for each country. So depending on how many people file, there's a certain amount of people that can come.
Are they
so if
trying
there's a
to
long
even
wait
out the
list-
numbers based
So
on the
the bill
population?
eliminates the country caps.
Yeah.
And so they're saying that everybody's on an equal basis that is merit-based or another means to come in.
So let's hit a positive part of this. You mentioned briefly that the DREAM Act is part of what's in this. So remind our audience and viewers the highlight elements of the DREAM Act.
So the DREAM Act is kind of homage to the DREAM Act that passed just in the House, and it didn't go anywhere in the Senate.
Right.
But it's incorporated into this bill. So students or people who came here before they were 16, completed their high school diploma or got their GED, have completed 2 years of college or 4 years of military service. Again, passed English requirements and background checks, so not a lot of the same crimes that I listed before. They can actually get their green card after 5 years as an RPI. So they would apply through the same process, become an RPI. After 5 years, they would get their green card, and they could immediately apply for citizenship. So they still want your money, but they'll allow you to become
welcome
a
to
citizen right
America.
away.
Give us your wallet.
Yeah,
And
so
they'll
it's a
have a
5-year
shorter
process.
track. They'll have a shorter track.
Yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
5-year.
Instead
It
of
sounds like a
13 or
lot shorter.
15.
It's a
Yeah.
5-year process instead.
But what happens during the time when they're going to school? Do they get scholarships? Do they get aids and all that?
They
See,
actually,
that's
they
the
actually
important
get,
part.
they'll be able to, they're eligible for federal work study and also federal financial aid as well. But,
Okay.
but they aren't eligible for, I think it's no means tested benefits until they get their green card.
And then a lot of states have different
Different
approaches.
approaches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Obamacare subsidies as well. They can pay full price for them, but they don't get the tax credits. Yeah.
Okay.
But they also aren't penalized for not having health care. That's the flip side of that.
Okay. Anything else we need to know as this debate moves forward? I mean, it's moving into the House, where who knows what's going to happen, because as a political body, the House of Representatives has become almost unbelievable. John Boehner has said that he doesn't support any kind of path to citizenship. Isn't that correct?
Yep. That's what
So-
he said.
That's not immigration reform, is it? Is it just border enforcement? What is he calling immigration reform? Do you have any idea?
I think it was. Yeah.
Don't feel bad about the blank look, because when you ask what John Boehner's politics are, it's like, who knows?
Well, he's trying to hold on to his speakership, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, he's trying to govern by the Hastert rule, which is majority of the majority, right? But he
Right.
has all these people who don't like it, but then also the Republicans who lost by a landslide in the last election because they didn't have Latino voters.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that I think he has to balance, and he's trying to be smart, but if you legalize a bunch of people who typically vote Democrat, then what do you have? In 13 years,
Yeah.
everybody will be Democratic voting.
Yeah.
So also, I think there is a sentiment against immigrants, right? So a lot of the people would like all of us to disappear, but they cannot talk about us because we have the citizenship, we have the right to vote. So I think that's why a lot of the anger and the brunt comes to undocumented, because then they could just talk about anything and say anything, treat them any which way.
Right.
And sad things are, people take advantage of them when they don't have, a path to citizenship, when they don't have the legal means. I know of a woman who told me that my boss made me work for 6 weeks, but didn't pay me a penny. And she had nowhere to go. Who's she going to complain to? Because she
Right.
doesn't want to go end up in jail.
Yeah, this is probably a whole other show that we could do
There is
on
Yeah.
the
whole-
exploitation
Exactly.
yes.
of
Yeah.
immigrants
So
Exactly.
and
the
other
bill
low-wage
tries to counter
workers.
that a little bit by increasing worker protections as well, but
Yeah.
there will always be people who exploit workers. and
Okay, well,
take
thanks for a
advantage.
really good explanation of, this mess that's in there. It sounds like typical Washington sausage legislation. And, I don't see this House of Representatives passing anything.
So
I
the
would like to
timelines-
think so, but
Yeah, the timelines that we've heard are hopefully before the end of the year, before the budget fight again, before the debt ceiling fight again.
Right.
Maybe after March, after the primary the filing deadlines.
yeah,
And then if not then maybe in the lame duck session.
Yeah,
You know,
so that they
if you
can't
want
be
it in this-
primaried and that
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
So I do want to move on to the county issues because there's a lot swirling around here. But I do want we have a very small audience here, but part of Other Voices is to include all the voices. So if anybody in the audience has a question about the federal legislation, now would be the time, and then we're going to jump into county issues. So anybody in the audience have anything they want to ask? Wait till the microphone gets there so that people watching at home and on the internet can hear it. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Elena. I am a teacher. I'm also an advocate of the Dreamers in Mountain View. And I just want to say thank you so much because the three people who have here, they have been my helpers. So the first educational workshop that we provide to my dreamers, Los Altos High School Dreamer, it was Teresa organization with Sarin. They were the one who provided my first one 2 years ago, and we're still working together. Asian community, we are working together. We belong to a coalition. So thank you so much. Interfaith, I cannot do anything without the help of the churches. Dreamers, we are here because of the support of all of you. So it's an honor to have you in my town. This is my town. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a very nice comment.
Thank
You
you.
said you're at Los Altos High School?
Right, so we work with Los Altos High School Dreamers, Mountain View High School Dreamers, Alta Vista Dreamers, Adult Education Dreamer, and we just partner with Foothill College Sueña, which is another group of dreamers from Foothill College. And
Yeah.
also we work with Sequoia High School Dreamers, East Palo Alto, Silicon Valley Dreamers. So we are a coalition of dreamers. We belong to this beautiful coalition.
Do you have a guess at how many dreamers are in our local high schools?
I cannot tell you exactly the amount, but we have a huge amount.
Hundreds?
Of,
The estimate is 17 to 30,000 in Santa Clara County.
in Santa
high
Clara
school.
County.
Santa Clara
Right.
County, people who qualify.
Yeah.
The majority are in high school.
Right.
17,000.
17 to 30,000.
17 to
Right.
30,000. Wow.
Right. It's huge. It's huge. They
Yeah.
are everywhere. Those are your neighbors. Those are my neighbors. Those are my students. Those
Yeah.
are my children. So
But
thank
Paul,
you so
there is
much.
another
Okay,
issue.
well, thank you very much for the nice comment, and thank you for your work. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Maria Marroquin, and I'm wondering if you have some good news, some idea, so what's going on or what's going to happen with the deportations. So I believe it's really important just to speak up about that, and how do you think about that? So we are going to be able to stop it, or we are going to be sending families turning apart?
I think that there is definitely community organizing around it. We're seeing civil disobedience begin to take place. I think all of this organizing creates the pressure to not only look at the issue, but to address the issue. Obama has the power to address the issue. I mean, he cannot pass immigration reform, but he can address this issue. And what I see happening in the community is organizing from workers, students, mothers, children. And so I think he will have to address it sooner rather than later. And obviously connected to all of this is that people have to continue to organize. You know, the silence, the just letting it happen, it will continue. But the organizing, and now we're seeing civil disobedience, is going to have an impact. That is how Obama was forced to address the issue of childhood arrivals, was because the youth started taking civil disobedience actions. And so they continue to organize and be politically engaged. So that is exciting.
Yeah, we are going to have a National Day on November the 27th, and I'm going to provide more information about that as civil disobedience.
I mean, if you can, I would reach out to members who aren't typically supportive of immigration reform. I know a lot of people have really extensive networks, and so if they could reach out across the country, because you know, representatives actually only really, I mean, they'll listen to other people, but they mostly care about what their constituents in their district say. So it has to be somebody with an address in their district.
I just want to say, Maria, it's nice to meet you. We've talked on the phone and we've emailed, but I don't think we've ever met face to face. So thank you for coming here tonight.
I
And
just want
let's
to
talk
bring another
afterwards.
attention to this 30,000 you said?
17 to
That seven-
30,000 dreamers in Santa Clara County.
That can qualify, they qualify for that. But there is a problem. The fees are so high for them that they are not able to do that.
The fees with the cost of living. So nationally, 50% of the kids who qualify have applied. Locally, only 25% have applied. So that means over 75% have not applied.
It costs $465. That's the filing fee.
So, Teresa, I missed part of what you said. The fee is based on the local cost of living?
No, that the local cost of living, when you have apartments that are
I
2,100,
see.
It's hard to just,
2,200 for a
you know.
two-bedroom, what do families have left over to spend other money on?
Yeah,
And so we
there's
think
no discretionary income.
Yes,
Yeah.
there isn't. And so what we're seeing is that 75% of the kids who qualify have not applied for this
Yeah.
administrative relief.
How do they come up with these fees? You know, can't cost that much to process paperwork. It
Yeah.
sounds punitive.
Well, USCIS is solely run on fees.
Yeah,
So they're not funded by anything, so they run on fees. So they kind of,
interesting.
like,
So
And
they
what-
have an incentive to jack up the fees.
And what we're seeing with DACA is that for the most part, you're talking about 80% of the kids are in high school. So they're
Yeah.
high school children
Yeah.
who
How
are
do
not
they
going to have
afford it?
jobs.
Yeah.
Their parents are probably undocumented too if the child's undocumented, so they probably don't have extra income.
Yeah.
They normally have one or more children that are around the same age, so how do you judge who gets to apply, who doesn't get to apply? And so in Silicon Valley, only 25% of the kids who qualify have applied, and so that means that for people who have a relief, a response, they will get a social security number, they can get a driver's license. They're not doing it. And so that is also a worry when immigration reform happens. When that happens, will people step forward? Because part of being undocumented is it's the psyche of being clandestine.
Right.
You survive because you're able to hide.
Right.
And now you have to prove that you were here, and you have to prove that you were here on June 15th. So I don't have proof that I was here on June 15th. I live here, but I don't have the proof. So
Yeah, I don't think
now-
I could prove I
yes.
was anywhere on a given
know.
day.
Yeah. And so there's a series of information that students are asked to bring, and it's hard to bring it forward.
Yeah.
And so we're doing a pilot project in East Side High School District where we're trying to engage teachers, parents, and students to be able to create some kind of support network. Because what we saw is that for the students that did step forward, there was a lot of mental health crises, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of worry of why do I get to do this and my parents don't. Some students were finding out for the first time I'm undocumented, I didn't even know I was undocumented. And then some kids, 16, 15-year-olds, they're rebellious. They don't want to be told what to do. That's
Yeah.
normal in this age range. And then some of them are thinking, oh my God, now I'm responsible for a family of 5.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a 15-year-old. So it has created sort of a crisis in the families that we haven't been able to address. So that's why we have a pilot project going on in Eastside to see, can we set up some support systems, some standards that we can then pass on to other school districts.
Right.
I would love my community to just sponsor a student kind of program.
Yeah.
So because this is going to help all of us. The more educated these kids become, the better our economy would be, the more they will be able to contribute. So rather than just, buying bigger houses, I would say if I have the money, I would say let's invest in these kids. Even if you could just do one student, $500, let's say, sponsor a student to become, legal.
Yeah, I just did a little quick math, and I warn you I'm not good at this, but 30,000 students, roughly $500 each is $15 million just in this county. Is that number right? Some coder out here. I think that's right.
sounds too much.
We got about less than 10 minutes, and I want to talk about some of the things going on in the county. First of all, there was a significant vote at the County Board of Supervisors just today.
this morning.
Who can tell us about that real quick?
We can both do the start.
Okay. So Santa Clara County has the most progressive civil detainer policy in the nation.
Civil
And-
detainer.
Yes. And so what that means is that there is a national policy where immigration and the FBI fingerprints are checked. And then based on the check, immigration can say, oh, make a request, hold that person for us, and then we will come investigate, talk to them, whatsoever. But there is no limit to how long they have to hold a person. It is only a request. and people can deny, and counties can deny the request. Santa Clara County decided we will deny requests that we are not reimbursed for. So if at that point they were holding over 400 people for over 6 months, they said no, we don't have the money to do this. This is a federal issue. Let the federal government deal with it. So what they decided was that they would not honor detainers. This was about 2 years ago. They re-looked at the issue today, and they confirmed that they want to sustain that issue at this time. And so that is something that's very important, because as we're seeing this broken immigration system, what we saw before the Trust Act was passed in the state of California is that women who were calling the police over DV issues, if they were undocumented, could also be arrested and placed in deportation proceedings because the police happened to find out they were undocumented. The same thing when children, if Child Protective Services is found and they find out that there is no abuse but the parents are undocumented, they could also report the parents. And so we were seeing a series of parents being split up, or if you were driving without a license and you happened to get arrested, you could be deported for that. And so we're seeing a series of issues happening across the state where people were afraid to call the police, where people were being victims of crimes, where we're not addressing these issues. And so that's why this policy was instituted in Santa Clara County. And we ended up being...
Or won't even speak up as witnesses, I would think.
Yes. And so we ended up being the most progressive county in the nation, and today we affirm that we will continue to be that.
That's great.
What was the vote? So that's very exciting. It was 3-2.
3-2.
And there were over 60 community leaders who stood up to say, this is important for this reason. We cannot set up a two-tiered system. We cannot do racial profiling. And immigration status cannot be the only reason that we deport people.
Yeah.
And there are systems in place. There's bail, there's charges, there's judges. So you can keep a person in jail if you need to.
Sure.
You don't have to deport him just based on immigration status.
Yeah. Do you know offhand, can you list who voted for it? I think people would be interested to know, but if you don't have the roll call, I know it was just today. Go ahead, Samina.
So Dave Cortese, Cindy Chavez, and Ken Yeager voted positive. Yes, we are going to keep the same policy for Santa Clara County.
And so Joe Simidian voted no.
Joe Simidian voted no, and
Wasserman
voted
no. Yeah, okay. Now, that's some interesting information. I still have a long list of county things here that we're not going to get to in our remaining 7 minutes. So what's most important that we should talk about? I'll let you guide me here. There's a one-day hunger strike coming up for Dreamers.
It happened last week.
Oh, that was last week.
Yeah,
okay.
It happened last week, and it was in support of the Dreamers who are doing civil disobedience.
Okay.
And they are getting, that one was deported, and that's why they did that hunger strike locally.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'm behind on a lot of this stuff.
There are a lot of people who aren't lawyers who are actually notarios they're committing fraud just because a lot of immigrants are coming out. They're hearing something about immigration reform, but nothing has been implemented yet. Nothing has passed and nothing's signed into law. And a lot of people are getting swindled, they're getting duped, and they're paying all this money, and then they're ending up, maybe somebody messes them up, and some people are actually getting deported because of it.
The term you use is notario?
Yeah. So
as in a notary, or just to do paperwork and stuff, right?
Yeah, but they're actually filing immigration paperwork on behalf. So we're trying to tell people, please go to a licensed attorney or a Bureau of Immigration Appeals accredited representative. So just please, the DA is trying to crack down on it, but it's really difficult in a community where you have 500,000 undocumented. You speak so many different languages.
Yeah. We once had an immigration attorney on our board of directors, and she said that's always a problem. Is what you're saying this is increasing or really skyrocketing as a result?
Well, because there's a debate going on.
Yeah.
And so they're taking advantage of the
There's a
hopes
lot of
that people
awareness.
have.
They're kind of hearing about it, but they're not exactly sure.
Well, and there's the stress around it, the mental health stress, and people are just saying, take it off me.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that notaries in other countries are lawyers. They're not lawyers here.
Interesting, yeah.
And so they're also taking advantage of that cultural knowledge of, oh, in my country they're a lawyer, so they must be lawyers here too.
Plus, anytime there is a crisis, just some people would always take advantage.
Yeah.
During the
absolutely.
INS special registration, that's why eventually I started having hotline. Even though I'm not attorney, what I did was I will call attorneys all over South Asians and all that because people felt comfortable going to them, which were bona fide attorneys, and just provide that information on the website, on the call and all that. So that way they are not taking advantage of. So I think we need to maybe just come up with something, hotline or some website where we just say, here are the bona fide attorneys that we can go to.
So we have about 3 minutes left, so I just want to go around the table and ask you to give our audience and our viewers and future viewers on the internet and current viewers, we're live on the internet as well, some encouragement what they can do to help move this process forward to get fair and meaningful immigration reform, and what should we be doing? 30 or 40 seconds each.
I think we need to engage with our legislators. We need to let them know what's happening, and not only the people that are impacted. The last time this happened, we saw wages increase, not only for immigrants, but for U.S. citizens. We saw home ownership increase. We saw spending on education increase. We saw revenues increase. And so there's a lot that will benefit our community if we address this issue.
Okay.
Yeah, so this
Minh-Chau?
bill is actually supposed to reduce the budget by $1 trillion over 20 years. So, I mean, like I said before, just please engage your networks. Actually, I think in our community we have really supportive legislators in the House. So I just, just reach out to your networks across the nation for people who typically aren't pro-immigrant.
So I would like to say that it starts really with each person. So you start treating immigrants that you meet the best way possible. I think that acceptance is the start. And then, legislation, yes, have a dialogue, treat each other with, dignity and respect. And then come to our convention on December 8th. We are going to have a panel. Teresa is going to moderate. Who is going to be left out of immigration reform? We have other programs too, but I think it is crucial.
And that information will be on Samina's website. I hope you've been paying attention to all the websites that are online, and check them out and get involved in this very important struggle that's coming up. We've been talking with, starting again at the far end, Teresa Castellanos of the Immigrant Relations and Integration Services of Santa Clara County. Thank you so much for your time. Minh-Chau Nguyen, staff attorney for the Asian Law Alliance, and Samina Sundas, founding executive director of American Muslim Voice. I'm Paul George, and I welcome you back next first Tuesday of December. I think we're going to be talking about the Iran peace process.
Great.
I don't know yet, but I hope so. Thanks for joining us. Other Voices is brought to you by Peninsula Peace and Justice Center, live on the first Tuesday of every month. Thanks for coming, tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you so much.